This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. With agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong. And featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Soye. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pioneer. Proud to work with farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on earth.
In this season of Thanksgiving, does agriculture still have things to be thankful for? Hello folks, welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, happy to be with you this week. I'm also joined by Mr. Max Armstrong. Max, what are you hearing? Are growers still finding things to be thankful for this season?
Well, I think so. The situation can vary, of course, from one farm to another so immensely, and we've had tough years after tough years, but this one, with all of its challenges, with the pandemic, with everything that has happened, I think many producers here in this season of Thanksgiving would acknowledge, Mike, yeah, there are some things we can count our blessings for.
Absolutely. You know, I had the opportunity to be in South Dakota talking to a lot of growers up in that part of the world. And despite all the challenges we saw in the grain markets and in livestock this year, they were thankful that harvest season in the Dakotas and western Minnesota went a lot more smoothly this year than it did in 2019, Max.
Yeah, quite a difference from a year ago, to be sure. And many of our producers, in addition to having pretty doggone good yields and a rapid harvest, also had, as you know very well, surprisingly good prices. And when you put it all together, it may be wise to immediately sit down and visit with your accountant because, as accountants are pointing out, there are a number of sources of income for this year. Some had not only the crop income, but there was crop insurance. There's the CFAP program, the second enrollment for which is taking place, I believe, through the 11th of December right now. Then you had, of course, the payments under the trade issues. That came earlier in the year. There was a February payment for that. So you put it all together. Oh, and farm bill payments. And there are these various sources that could make it a little more complicated than usual. It might require a more proactive strategy to protect your income, to get every bit of it that you are guaranteed and that you have earned.
That's a really, really good point, Max. And for a lot of folks, as we were coming through this year, the expectation was for reduced income as crop prices were struggling. Well, now as we've come through harvest, crop prices have climbed quite a bit. I know some growers have changed their marketing strategies, and all of those things can impact your take-home pay. So, Max, you're exactly right. We're a month away from the end of the year. Let's be proactive. Let's get out there and make sure that you're doing the right thing for your operation.
When you put together that team that you rely upon heavily in your operation, the accountant is one of the crucial ones. And he or she can guide you through this path. Maybe there's something you can put into your retirement now here at the end of the year. Perhaps there's something you can do in terms of buying or getting rid of assets. So, yeah, have that conversation soon, I suspect they would say.
That's right. And as always, continue to watch the markets. I know a lot of growers, particularly our grain growing friends, are thankful for this rally that we have had in place for the past several months. It's kind of been a nail biter, Max. We'll see if it continues.
Look all around you. There are blessings that you can count too, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Well, Max Armstrong, we always love chatting with you. Thanks for being with us this morning. Volatility in the commodity markets continues. To help us make sense of what has happened and what might be coming in the future, we're joined this weekend by Dr. Matt Roberts of the Kernmantle Group. Dr. Roberts, thanks for chatting with us.
Why, thanks for having me on, Mike.
Well, you bet. Now, I want to talk about the grain markets right off the bat. And of course, we've got supply on our mind as the harvest season is coming to an end. But demand is a huge component of what makes the prices that farmers take home. And ethanol has been a huge component of corn pricing for some time. Matt, will it regain its prominence as we get into 2021?
The main thing that's really hurt ethanol over the past 12 months, the kind of the short term, of course, is COVID. It's the collapse in driving. It's everybody doing these interviews, whereas we know 12, 18 months ago, I'd hopefully be sitting beside you in the studio because I'll jump in my car, make the 5-hour drive up to Chicago, have steak, and yap. Now we do it all on Zoom, and that's not just this is everything. What I would expect is as we move into the second quarter, probably, of 2021, we expect to start seeing a lot of things loosen up. We know that we now have 3 vaccines that are out that are effective. We would expect to start seeing those filtering out. And I believe we'll start to see a lot of things return to something more normal. By fourth quarter 2021, I think driving demand, mileage demand goes back so that ethanol can get back to a more normal area. Now, one of the problems is over time, we've seen compression in that ethanol demand as cars become more effective or better mileage as yields go up. So ethanol hasn't given us the big boost in prices, but it's at least held it. So I think, yeah, through 2021, that piece of the demand puzzle looks a lot better.
Now, the other major component of the demand puzzle here in 2020 has been Chinese demand. Matt, as you look at our best guess of what is happening in China, how much was their corn crop hurt this past year? What have you heard?
Clearly it was hurt. I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't matter what really any of us have heard. Unless you actually have the ability to travel over thousands of miles in China, it's all guesswork, and we're going to infer it by how they act. It's clear it was a bad year. It's clear that they're shorter of feed grains than they have been, because we haven't seen the ramp in animal numbers compared to 3 years ago, compared to pre-ASF, that would lead us to believe that they need to really ramp up their feed grain imports. Remember, China is pork focused, a little less in poultry space. That's why it's so meal focused and not feed grain. It's those higher protein, higher conversion ratio animals. So we've seen a lot of damage. I think, as you know, and that's why for everything we've seen on the feed grain side, everything we've seen on those on that corn side, it's the bigger pieces on the meal side or on the protein side, the vegetable protein. I don't think this is the start of this long-awaited China import wave of corn that we've been talking about for 20 years. I think this is a short crop, temporary situation.
And we'll be back with more market chat with Dr. Matt Roberts in just a second. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're talking markets with Dr. Matt Roberts of the Kernmantle Group. And Matt, in the first segment, you talked about how Chinese demand for corn might just be a bump, but this demand for protein, and in particular meal and beans, might be long-lived. Where does China go from here?
We are at the point where we're going to get back to that long-term trend of ever higher imports from China, getting past that ASF. Go back to 2000, really from 2000 to 2016, and you look at their imports, and it's just ever rising every year, higher and higher and higher. And I think now we've turned the corner, or China's turned the corner on ASF, and they're ready to pull those back in, where we're talking about an extra 25, 50,000 acres a year, 100,000 acres even of additional demand. The question becomes, in any given year, how much of that's South American fed, how much of it is North American fed? But at least the overall demand pie gets back to growth.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about that distinction between North American supplies and South American supplies. The big thing that I'm hearing from a lot of folks right now is the drop in the value of the U.S. dollar. Matt, is that something you see continuing into 2021, keeping us competitive?
I think actually it probably is going to stabilize, maybe even go higher. Now, it's a little hard to see right now. The hard thing about currencies is it's always relative. You can't just look at the dollar alone. You've got to look at what's happening in the American economy versus other economies. We've already seen just over the past 4 weeks an increase of about 30 basis points in our longer-term interest rates. Why? Because they believe that with the Biden administration, with some vaccines out there, we can return to growth. And that means returning to higher interest rates, more debt, and that's going to pull more money into the United States, into the US dollar, to hold that debt. I mean, crazy thing. Last week, China issued billions of dollars. I forget off the top of my head, $30, $40 billion of 5-year debt at negative interest rates. And so America returning to growth means higher interest rates here, means more money coming in. And when I say higher interest rates, don't worry. This isn't your operating line. This isn't your landlines. We're talking 1/4, 0.5% on those longer term rates. That's going to drive flows. So I don't think we're going to benefit as much from the weaker dollar as we maybe have, I think our big advantage starts to return to the fact we are a reliable supplier. We're a reliable partner in trade who can get the beans where they need to be.
All right, all things to keep an eye on. Dr. Matt Roberts of the Kernmantle Group, we always appreciate your insight here on this program. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Well, folks, the holidays are getting closer. Back at the desk this week is Chad Colby with this week's gift guide. Chad, of course, we all use our phones for a million different things, but it's always a challenge to get them to stand up. What do you use? What do you recommend?
Well, you know what? I found this about a month ago, Mike, and this is pretty exciting. A little, I want to say, portable tripod. And you've got it in the box right there, but look at how easy this is to use. You simply make one revolution, you flip up the two sides, so that's what it looks like. And then at your desk, you just take your smart device, and it comes with different adapters. They're in the box over there to match your phone. You just clip this little guy right in here and set it down. And now if you're on a Zoom call or FaceTime, or you just have your phone at your desk, what a handy little tripod.
Very handy. And speaking of handy, there is never enough pens on anybody's farm. And Chad, you've got some of these big boys.
You know,
what are we working with?
These are some of my all-time favorites. I was looking around my airplane hangar, actually, trying to figure out what stuff do you bring to remind people that exist. These are great. I've used these for probably 8 or 10 years. And they're a paint marker. And the nice part about them is, Mike, up to 300 degrees. So if you're around steel or welding, they're so handy. They come in different colors. What, did you already grab a couple here? You
bet.
Put those in your pocket?
You bet these are going in my pocket. We got yellow, we got white, we got black, green, red, everything you need. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I use them for welding. They're fantastic for marking on steel. But when I'm out in the shop, sometimes what I need, Chad Colby, is a little bit of beat, some music to keep things going. You got anything good that'll play some tunes?
You know what? I got this about 2 months ago, and, you know, I thought I would try it and see what I thought. Wow, you can Bluetooth to your phone, works seamlessly, so nice, big sound, it's kind of handy, and it's really portable. It'll take whatever battery you've got, works really nice. The other thing that I brought too from Milwaukee, simply because I bought them and used them, Mike, is they've got a new line of some really aggressive Sawzall blades, and as weird as that sounds, it's super handy because you can throw this on your Sawzall, cut down a tree limb, works super good.
Absolutely, and you can never have too many blades when you got a Sawzall. They will always come in handy. But Chad, a lot of our viewers know you are our resident drone expert. And this year we've got some new tools. What is the cool new drone in your toolkit?
You know, we did a segment on it a few weeks ago, and recently there's a kind of a new drone on the scene. And one of the frustrations I've had over the years is, where do you start, Mike? You can't just go buy a $3,000 or $4,000 drone and jump in. And there hasn't really been anything that's been, you know, rugged enough to handle agriculture on your farm or ranch until recently. And this little guy right here, I'm going to hand it to you. This little guy right here is 250 grams with the battery. Okay, so Mike, your favorite Diet Coke is 380 grams. Feel how light this is.
Absolutely incredible. Folks, this is, I don't even realize that I'm carrying it. What's this set run, Chad?
Yeah, so this whole kit, that's batteries, charger, the controller, about $700, and the controller's nice, Mike, because you can just pull this up and put any smartphone right in, and it works great.
That is absolutely incredible, and that is out. Folks can go buy it right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible stuff. Well, we have a lot to thank Chad Colby for. Chad, thanks for taking the time to give us your thoughts on this year's gift giving. Well, the holiday season certainly gets us thinking about holiday flavors, and for a lot of people, those flavors include cranberries. But where do they come from? Jamie Johansson had the chance to travel to the cranberry capital of Wisconsin to learn from the Weatherby Cranberry Company how it gets to your table.
The majority of Weatherby cranberries are dried, but they also sell them fresh.
Our fresh fruit is mostly with our later varieties because they have a real good keeping quality, so that when they appear in the grocery stores, they're always fresh and plump and ready to use. We have the natural cranberry, dried of course, and this year A new flavor that we are selling out of our warehouse is the cinnamon flavored dried cranberry. And that's real popular with people to put on their hot oatmeal in the morning or throw a handful into that delicious apple pie that you make in the fall of the year.
But before any of that can take place, the cranberries must come in out of the marshes. All Wisconsin cranberries are wet harvested, which begins by flooding the marshes and using a tractor to harrow the beds.
And then after that, we have to collect or gather all the fruit. And we do that by a yellow, kind of a floating fence, and it's called corralling the cranberries. So we're gathering and collecting them to one end of our bed, and then we set in a berry pump. What the pump does is it sucks everything out of the bed. What I mean by everything, it's the water, the trash, which consists of dried leaves, grasses, and twigs, and the berries. The trash will, through an air and water filtration system inside the pump, it will separate all those three items out. The water will be recycled back into the bed. The trash will go into an awaiting dump truck, which eventually we will dump in the back 40 and it becomes compost. And the berries, which by that time are 97% clean of trash, go directly into a semi-trailer. When that semi-trailer is full, we have about 40,000 pounds of cranberries in it. We take that to our nearby receiving station, and they are mechanically sorted well enough for a processed product, put into 1,000-pound wooden tote bins, and then transported again to our processor to be made into sweetened dried cranberries.
We typically think of cranberries around Thanksgiving, but of course here at Weatherby, they suggest them year-round. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Jamie Johansson.
Thank you, Jamie. That is a fascinating story. It's neat to see those cranberries just floating there in the bog, waiting for their chance to get on the truck that'll bring them to your table this holiday season. Don't go anywhere, folks. We are going to be talking tillage with clips from the Farm Progress Show virtual experience later on in the program. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. I've spent my life around farm machinery, but I have never seen a cotton picker in action. Max, you had the chance to really get in deep with a historic example.
The modern machines are big, they are complex, they are expensive, but even the old ones back in the day were marvels in their time. Randy Bodine collects those cotton harvesters. He's in Alabama.
I'm a seventh generation farmer. And our family has been using and operating and running International Harvester for all those generations, all the way back into the mule days. We've got mule equipment that's IHC, International Harvester. So it's just a natural thing for our family. We've been read, as we call it, for all of those generations on the farm.
If you've got mule-drawn equipment, that goes back to the beginning of the century, the previous century.
Yeah, well, our farms, like I said, it's been in the family for 7 generations. So, yeah, we run real deep in International Harvester products.
You're in front of a cotton picker here. How many do you have altogether?
We've got several of these, 1 row and 2 row and 4 row, and, of course, the modern stuff that comes along. But our dad bought the first 1 row cotton picker to ever come to the county that we live in. So he was an innovative farmer, and of course always trying to move along. We pick cotton by hand, of course, prior to this, and of course International Harvester, brought the first commercially available cotton picker to the market. So they are the father of the mechanical cotton picker. It was developed in the Hobson Plantation just south of Memphis, Tennessee. And the International Harvester had a plant in Memphis, and that's where all the cotton pickers were built and produced, is Memphis, Tennessee. And of course they were supplying them for the South, because that's where cotton's got a long growing season. So that's why it grows so well south of the Mason-Dixon line, because of the long growing season.
Were you old enough to remember when he took delivery of that 1 row cotton picker?
Oh, no. I may not have been thought about at the time, but I grew up around them and grew up running them. I was 13, and Dad took a load of cotton to the cotton gin, and and he let me run everything else. I started running a H farm all plowing cotton with a 2-row front-mounted cultivator when I was 7, and I caught him going to the gin one time when I was 13, and when he came back, I had a full basket of cotton, okay? Now, I messed up that day because after that point, he knew I could run one, and I had to run one from there on, so. But he was always afraid I'd run a rock through the header, or I'd turn it over, or I'd do something. So.
But when you proved you could, there you went.
Yep, there I went. And so from there forward, I had to, I ran a picker in the fall as well.
Well, what is striking as you look over this piece of equipment, I mean, it looks very foreign to somebody who grew up in grain crop areas, but you look at the similar parts on here, similar to other IH pieces of equipment. I see the paddle throttle, for example, up there next to the operator platform, and the switch box, shaped just like a switch box on a farm oil tractor. And I look far enough back, by golly, there's a farm oil tractor.
Yep. What they did is they took a tractor and actually turned the transmission around. They took the main bull gear and flipped it to the other side. So it operates 5 gears going what would typically be in reverse for a tractor, and one gear going what would typically be forward in that tractor. So they just basically turned it around and put it right under the cotton picker, and all the components of it are very familiar, from the switches to the boxes to the throttles. They just moved the operator station up top so that you can see this one row of cotton going through this header is what they did. And of course, one of the things that a lot of farmers, the smaller farmers, especially in the South, they would take this tractor out from under the picker and turn the bull gear around and use that tractor to farm with, and then when they got the crop laid by, they would take all the seed off and they would roll it back turn the bull gear around, put it back under the cotton picker, and then use it that fall to pick cotton with. And then over the winter, they'd take the tractor back out and use it to farm with. So that was one of the advantages of having an actual tractor under the picker.
Did your daddy do that, or did he have a big enough farm that he had separate units, he didn't need to turn that tractor around?
He did it the first year that he bought that picker. He turned it around, and it takes about 2 days back then, especially.
I can imagine.
To take one out, and about 2 days to put one in, and then after that first season, he bought other tractors, and he left it on there and never took it out after that point.
How good a job did they do of getting good, clean cotton up there in the hopper?
Well, they do an excellent job, but now compared to hand picking, the problem they had when they were first introduced was that when you looked out across that field, you could still see white cotton after a cotton picker had gone through it. Because when you picked it by hand, then you got every piece, anything that was white. So a lot of the farmers, when it first came out, they thought it was leaving too much cotton, and they resisted it for a long time. But as time went on, they couldn't get enough hands to pick cotton, so they had no choice but to go to mechanical pickers.
Randy Bodine, his family collects those old machines. They have quite a display of those in the area around Auburn, Alabama. They're big Auburn fans, to be sure, and it is something to see those machines operate. We talked to him at the Red Power Roundup a couple of years ago. They had standing cotton there where they were demonstrating how those old harvesters worked, Mike.
Incredible technology. And folks, if you want to see modern technology, we've got tillage from Great Plains coming up later in the show.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by ADM.
Well, many of the growers we know had that goal of getting everything done by Thanksgiving, and many of them were well ahead of that. They put the combine away, they've cleaned it up. They're looking at what worked well in this 2020 growing season. Colin Miller is with us from Pivot Bio to talk about one thing that we want to zero in on. Colin, I know you're a technical service manager for Pivot, and I want you to talk a bit about some of the results from this growing season to begin with, because several producers I know said, we're watching it. We hear you talk about it. Max, we're watching it this season. What have you heard?
Yeah, we've been seeing some really exciting results coming out of the field this year. Harvest, especially in the eastern part of the U.S., has been lagging, so we're still seeing some fields coming off. But with the preliminary results that we've seen so far, We're settling kind of in that 4.5 all the way up to 16 bushel difference using Pivot Bio Proven. Those tests mostly are leaving the nitrogen rate constant across the field instead of reducing that nitrogen rate where you're using Proven. Most growers are using Proven as a way to fill in the gaps where their traditional nitrogen may fail.
That's remarkable when you think about the kind of advances in yields that you're seeing there. And on a regular basis, you hear producers saying, yeah, we added to the yield, we believe, this way.
Yeah, and yield is a large part of it. However, the other exciting part that we're seeing are some of the growth differences in the plant. Almost across the board, we're seeing larger root masses, larger stalk diameters, taller plants, greener plants, and plants that are staying greener longer. That's because Proven is providing the corn plant nitrogen between V5 and R2. So it's carrying some of that nitrogen later into the season and providing some growth benefits. Now, those don't necessarily translate directly to yield, but it's a promising sign that our microbe got colonization and is providing those growth differences.
And many growers just welcome a different approach to utilization of nitrogen, do they not?
That's correct. It behaves differently than your traditional nitrogen in that it does not leach or denitrify. It doesn't need rain to activate either. So especially around side dress time where you're kind of reliant on weather to help your normal nitrogen application perform, this is a form that does not need to rely on the weather to produce the 25 pounds of nitrogen.
What else should we know about Pivot Bio Proven? Give us a little more background on it.
Yeah, so it is a microbial product. We apply it in the furrow, and when it's in there, what it's doing is attaching itself to the corn root once it emerges, and feeding off the exudates that the corn root puts out. It's able to fix atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia directly there on the corn root. Because all the activity is happening on the roots, again, we do not leach or denitrify. All 25 pounds is making its way into the plant.
It stays put, as you say in your advertisements. What's the best way to find a Pivot Bio Proven sales representative?
Yes, if you go to pivotbio.com, we do have a rep locator there that will tell you who is closest to you. There's also a phone number you can call our customer success center, and they'd be happy to help you locate a local sales rep.
Colin, we appreciate it. Thanks for filling us in.
Thank you very much.
Colin Miller, Technical Service Manager with Pivot Bio Proven. He's in the Eastern Corn Belt, Columbus, Ohio area.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot Bio Proven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
Well, Greg, growers keep making progress on harvest across the country. When you look out on the West Coast, it's been kind of last verse, same as the first. It's been a lot of the same thing. Any changes coming up?
Not much of a change. You know, they did get some moisture into Northern California, but as a whole, Mike, nothing southward of any significance. So at least they made good progress on cotton harvest, about 80% complete in the valleys of California. Meanwhile, two other systems, the first one fast moving, the second one has a little more moisture, Northern California, the Pacific Northwest. We are often running here post-holiday in fairly quiet mode. A little more of a chill, appropriate for late November across the northern plains. You see that weather system skedaddling quickly west to east. You're not going to come up with a bunch of moisture in this west to east zonal flow, but there is at least a couple of showers later in the week. Northern California, Pacific Northwest, quiet Intermountain West, and again, a typical mid to late November feel. Nothing worse across the Dakotas northward into the Canadian prairie. Watch the weather maps and charts here in the Southwest if you want, and you don't even really have to because there's not much going on. Offshore flow maybe Southern California, Santa Ana for a while. A little more of a chill into the central and southern plains. Of course, widespread drought. What is it? 80% of the western state territory. That's 11 states in the midst of a at least a severe or exceptional drought. And little change. Nary a drop of moisture. Fast moving front, little wind into the northern and central high plains. Southern California again. Warmth across the desert southwest. Pretty quiet weather pattern as usual. And this setup continues in the valleys of California.
Well, I know some growers in the northern corn belts got a shot of moisture. Both rain and snow came down this past week. What does the next week look like?
A quieter scenario, a little more typical late autumn, early December, early winter feel. Nothing more. That weekend weather system, here's the back edge of it, clearing out of the eastern corn belt. Seasonal cold across the upper Midwest, parts of the Dakotas, a fair amount of late autumn and early winter sunshine. Grounds lacking frost and freeze, so we're able to percolate some of that moisture in, but watch your step and or hoof kindly. in some of these more significantly watered down or snowed down areas of late. This is a weak weather system making its way into the central and southern plains. It'll take a route through the southern Corn Belt late in the week. Quiet high pressure across the Great Lakes, much of the Midwest. Opportunities hopefully through Michigan and in Ohio to put a wrap on harvest. They're still a little bit behind there, but everyone else in relatively good order. Quiet high pressure southern plains, all quiet in the desert southwest. A couple of showers Gulf Coast area. We do see low pressure dropping into the Red River Valley of the north. That will once again enhance some shower activity where we don't need any more of it after a nice break into the Delta. That'll be spreading over the southeastern states over the late portion of the week, and a little cool down in temperature readings as well, appropriate for the time of year.
Well, I'm sure some growers in Ohio and Michigan will appreciate the chance to wrap up harvest, but what about a little farther east as you get to the coast, Greg? How do things look?
Well, looks like we've had some significant moisture of late, manageable setup. Of course, still in the midst of a drought-ridden weather pattern here. Rain shower activity ahead of this cold front early in the week. Here is again a change to some cooler to colder air across the Corn Belt. Nothing that will put substantial frost or freeze to the ground. A little bit of lake snow flurry and sprinkle activity here. Here's the late week weather system heading into the Ohio Valley and points out of the east. Across Virginia, just not even 80% of harvest complete there. They continue and representative of a very late harvest season with all the moisture in the southeastern part of the country. And it's back into play for the Delta and points out of the east. Showers and thunderstorms early on in the week. Southern plains back into moisture, Gulf Coast areas as well as we head on through almost the beginning part of December.
Now, Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you.
Well, Greg, with the La Nina setup we're entering this fall, you had mentioned earlier that perhaps mid-November would be the deadline for guys getting crops out of the fields.
Yep.
As you look ahead to this next week, they still have an opportunity.
Still an opportunity. Of course, we had a little setback over the past week, but the moisture, whether it came down in one form or another, of great benefit, melted all down. It was an inch or two. This week, a little more scattered, random, quarter to maybe some spots, a half an inch. And again, it'll come down in the form of maybe some organized snowfall here. Once again, the action shifts southward with two weather systems. Delta, southeastern states, another inch or two well behind the 8 ball on cotton harvest, peanuts, sorghum, quality issues as well. Maybe to northern California, a half inch into the Pacific Northwest as well. Nary a drop. Central and southern California and the desert Southwest. Mike, that is usually a trademark of a strengthening La Nina. We'll have to watch fires as well as we get even deeper into the winter season.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper. The week after, what do you anticipate seeing, Greg?
Look at this warm bubble of high pressure, and with that also a west to east, what we call Chinook flow. Air comes down off the mountains, it sinks, it compresses, it warms. So, you know, it's not 70s and 60s and 80s, but it certainly is mild for December in many areas. Some cloudiness, some moisture keeping temps a bit below average over the southeastern part of the country. And at least it's a more normalized late autumn precip pattern for far northern California, the Pacific Northwest. Dry as you go from the southern sections, the Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Valley into the Corn Belt, maybe a little above average across parts of the mid-Atlantic and the northeastern states. So the dry and drought-ridden areas will see a further setback here in that upcoming week.
Well, let's talk about that midweek, that week of December 14th. What kind of scenario do you see developing?
As we head through mid-December, again, very little change, very mild. I mean, it's not like it's summertime, but again, well above average, 40s and 50s, no significant frost or freeze going into the ground, not even a thaw-freeze cycle anticipated. Temperatures about normal in northern New England, Pacific Northwest as well, with most of the heartland. Again, looking at almost late October or November-like temperature levels. A little pickup on moisture. Good news, Pacific Northwest. Almost dry as a bone from the Divide all the way to the East Coast up to the Canadian Prairie, Gulf Coast area. A couple of clipper systems will bring about some welcome moisture, probably snow, into far northern areas of New England.
All right, Greg, the final week of your forecast begins on December 21st. So what do things look like when I start Christmas shopping?
And we start officially, astronomically, the winter season. You know, we're kind of right there back in my single days with as well holiday shopping. In any event, I digress. With colder air on the move, we talked about this last week. We think it's on the move mid to late December here. Warmth here. You set up a very active storm track, Pacific Northwest, winter storms across the northern plains, northern half of the Corn Belt into the northeast of New England, back to dry time over the deep southern United States.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
And many weeks this fall, we've been showing you auger tractors. Tractors that back in their heyday might have been performing all of the responsibilities on the farm of tillage, cultivation, harvest, and other jobs. These days, they're pretty much relegated to auger duty, putting the grain in the bed. We'll show you one in Ohio this weekend on a Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Store Lock Cabinets. The first thing you'll notice is their beauty, and then over time you'll appreciate their remarkable durability. What I tell you is the best tool cabinet you'll ever buy, Store Lock. Check them out at storelock.com. Well, some of the auger tractors we've had here weren't really all that old, and some had been used for years, but they had been finally restored. This one falls into neither category. Take a look at it. Oh, it's pretty tough looking, but it still runs, it still does the job. In fact, I think if you look real close on some of these shots, you can see the muffler cap is open, the engine is operating on that Alice Chalmers made back in 1947. Gabe Fincher tells me that that tractor has served and continues to serve 3 generations of Finchers at New Philadelphia, Ohio. Well, the period of time between Thanksgiving and Christmas can be so busy, and it will be busy for the folks at Big Iron Auctions. Let's check in with Mark Stock to see what's coming across the block as we get into the month ahead.
Max, we got a great lineup of equipment selling in December. The December 2nd sale features 900 items selling from 140 different sellers. We've got equipment selling for Pro Energy in Sedalia, Missouri, including a 2008 John Deere 6175 mechanical front tractor with a loader. Only 153 hours. They've got a 2017 Great Plains no-till drill and a 2011 KC Slider sliding floor tandem axle show car trailer. They also have 9 Polaris and Yamaha ATVs and UTVs. So check out all that good quality equipment. Then on December the 9th, folks, the Michael Anderson retirement sale in Hinsboro, Illinois will take place. They've got an outstanding lineup of quality equipment: John Deere 9560 Combine, Magnum 275 Case IH tractor. You got a Case IH MX 210 and Brent and J&M gravity wagons and grain carts. Then we've got the big sale for Kurtz Farms. They are retiring from Palmer, Nebraska. One owner, always been shedded, red machinery, Miller Nitro 4240, self-propelled sprayer with 856 hours. Case IH Magnum 315 and a Magnum 275 tractor, Case IH 8930 mechanical front tractor. Check out the Honda off-road side-by-side UTV. It's a 2019 model. That equipment selling once again December the 9th. We've got outstanding equipment selling throughout December. Go to bigiron.com for more information.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
This week's FFA Chapter Tribute continues our spotlight on the National Officer Team. Joining us this week is Artha Jonas-Sant. She is the Southern Region Vice President on the National Officer Team, currently a student at Harvard. Artha, tell us a little bit about the Southern Region. What do you guys bring to the table?
I mean, the southern region of the United States just brings so much charm and flair to our organization. We have so much rich agriculture from the state of Florida to Georgia to Arkansas and all of the other places that encompass our region within the National FFA organization. It's been incredible to watch us shine at the national level in career and leadership development events, and I'm looking forward to seeing so much of the great work that our students do each and every day this year.
You know, you've got some challenges here in the school year of 2020 reaching out to students. How have you been able to do it effectively?
Right. So this year just doesn't look like any other year. And that has also allowed us to reach out to more students and to meet them where they are, to come into their homes, come into their classrooms at rates that we were never able to do in person. So it's been amazing to listen to their stories and to see what kinds of things that they're doing in their home chapters while visiting their homes virtually. It's been amazing.
It is very cool. And Artha, I'm sure you have learned a lot in your time in FFA. Can you tell us some of the highlights?
For sure. I think one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned in FFA is that you're a part of something bigger than yourself. Agriculture is one of the industries that touch every single person on this earth. And when you think of creative, innovative solutions, you can touch every single person. And that's what I love most about agriculture and what FFA has told me.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic story, Artha. We wish you the very best as you go forward as This Week in Agribusiness salutes the National FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
During this season of giving thanks, I want to say thank you to a special group of people. The farmers, the ranchers, the food producers all across the nation who provide us with a great meal such as this year's Thanksgiving Day dinner. The American Farm Bureau Federation said the cost of a dinner for 10 people on Thanksgiving, $46.90. That's less than $5 a person. And then another group that I want to say a special word to, the National Pork Producers Council. Thanksgiving Day launched the Give a Ham Challenge, a national campaign encouraging hog producers and others in the industry to donate pork to organizations serving the food insecure. The Give a Ham Challenge runs through the end of the year, and Pork Producers President Howard A.V. Roth, a hog farmer from Wazeeka, Wisconsin, said, "With so many Americans struggling with COVID-related financial challenges, this year's Give a Ham Challenge takes on special meaning. Giving back to our communities is a core value of hog farmers nationwide. It's gratifying to come together as an industry this time of year to save and serve thanks to those in need." Good words from the president of the pork producers. Let's all support their campaigns. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Don't go away. Coming up next on the program, we'll be taking an in-depth look at Terra Max Tillage, the new product from Great Plains. Over the past couple years, a lot of growers have dealt with weather challenges, whether it's during harvest or during planting or even during the middle of the growing season, and they've been looking for ways to fix their soil. Well, at the Farm Progress Show virtual experience, we got to look at what Great Plains brings to the table for tillage.
The Great Plains Terra Max. Check out the most versatile tillage tool to enter the variable intensity hybrid tillage market, the all-new Terra Max from Great Plains. The Terra Max is an adaptable soil management solution equally suited for both primary and secondary tillage. The innovative Terra Max addresses a wide variety of needs, from sizing residue in the fall to preparing a seed bed in spring field conditions. Offered in 20-foot to 40-foot models, the Terra Max features hydraulically adjustable front and rear coulter gangs. The front gangs adjust from 0 to 8 degrees, while the rear gangs adjust from 0 to 6 degrees. The new Turbo Speed blade optimizes soil penetration and turns 5% faster than conventional blades to produce remarkable tillage results. Opposing left hand and right hand rolling spike harrows, followed by a single or double basket rear attachment with active hydraulic down pressure, all work together to provide a planter-ready finish. With the Terra Max from Great Plains, producers have the ability to create the ideal seed bed with a high-quality finish level soils, remove ruts, and annihilate chemically resistant weeds, all with one versatile, innovative tool. Visit GreatPlainsAg.com to learn more about the all-new TerraMax or to find your nearest Great Plains dealer.
Boy, I could watch those videos all day of tractors getting work done out in the field. And if you feel the same way, check it out. Go to farmprogressshow.com and there's 100 product demonstrations taken from this year's virtual Farm Progress Show. Folks, thanks so much for taking the time to join us this weekend. We hope you found a lot to be thankful for this year, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Pioneer and ADM. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.